Hello, as I say this to you right now, it's good morning. It's about 10:30 on a Wednesday morning, and we're really thinking about you. All of us are, Father Nickolai and myself. We miss you. I miss seeing you on Sundays and being able to talk about you or your family and talking about the homily, which is always a joy to me. I know that this shutdown of things is very difficult on every one of us in different ways, and I know for yourself it's difficult in some unique ways, and I care about that. So we thought, and Kara Cohen and Gina are guiding a lot of things to put out publicly these days, that a little video message like this from me would help. I'm glad you can see me. I wish I could see each of you and really kind of know how you're doing and maybe have a moment to hear that, but just know that, again, I'm praying for you. You're in my office, by the way. You might look around and, there's some hockey memorabilia, there's some kids' drawings I love to keep nearby, there's some Pez dispensers, there's my coffee, which is always nearby, there's some Antarctica pictures on the wall over there, and a busy desk. A busy person has a little bit of a messy desk, so I'm okay with that. We're making this message pretty much along the lines of the pastor's pen in the bulletin this week. There will be bulletins available as there were last weekend. They'll be available in church or at the parish office or some other ways that we can. Pretty much this is the message that's in the flock note that you might have gotten yesterday, although I can include a few more things on this today. I want to keep this, by the way, to about 12 minutes so that it's easy enough to watch. So, a few points of information. Last week things happened so quickly, none of us were ready. Before the church closure and Mass's ending was announced, Millie asked us to close the Adoration Chapel because people had already been canceling or just not showing up. Millie, a dear senior person herself, was trying to cover so many hours, and she told Deacon Denny we have to shut the Adoration Chapel. So that was even before the Masses. St. Catherine's Apartments, we were going to go up for a Mass, as I went up for Mass on Ash Wednesday and had Mass at St. Catherine's on Ash Wednesday morning with the residents. But last week they told us not to come. They were closing the facility to visitors. Even the priests would not come. The church, as you know, perhaps from our signage, is open for a couple of hours a day. This is permitted under the stay-at-home order in the county, and I believe statewide now. It's open for an hour in the morning at 9 and for an hour in the afternoon at 5 o'clock. On Saturdays, it's open kind of the regular confession time, 4 to 5 o'clock. These are quiet times. We really don't want recited prayers at this time because we can't offer a lot of times. There's no bathrooms. We don't have people to clean them. At the same time, we haven't had a lot of visitors at these hours. 9 o'clock on weekday mornings, 5 o'clock on weekday afternoons. So feel free to come, and if you want it to be open, you may want to start using it. We do have to keep pretty much to 10. If it's anything over, well, we have to be very spread out anyway in church by what you know now is social distancing. I want to address something I've heard about the cancellation of Masses, that I've heard people say, well, we didn't have to cancel Masses because we could go ahead and gather at Mass and God would protect us in church. God doesn't work like that. That's called magical thinking. That's not faith. God always expects us to follow the advice of our medical people. You don't cancel your trip to the doctor as if God told you to. God never tells you to not take your medicine. God never tells you to not go to rehab. So we don't put ourselves in foolish situations for the time in health and think that God will rescue us. We don't decide one night, exaggeration, that I'm going to go get drunk and I'm going to drive my car at 120 miles an hour and God will save me. That's magic. Jesus rejected that. In the desert, in the first Sunday of Lent, the devil said, throw yourself off the tower and you won't get hurt because God will save you. And Jesus says, I will not test the Lord my God. So we follow the advice of medical people in a prudent way. And besides that, there's another reason to go along with these things as much as they hurt us to be deprived of. You know, everyone in the human race is going through this right now. And if we somehow magically, it doesn't work this way, but if we were supermen and superwomen and we could gather in church and say that God would keep us from getting sick, people would see us and then would be coming out into stores, into gas stations, into pharmacies, pretending that we're okay. But we would have scandalized many people who said, look at those Catholics. They're not caring for the community. They gather in groups, they may be transmitting, and then they go to the stores and that. It would be what's called a scandal. It would be bad for the reputation of the church. And as the Archbishop knows, we are to follow civil authorities. We are to follow health authorities who are now so united in what we need to do to keep ourselves safe and to keep our society safe. So we do these things out of prudence God expects of us, for ourselves and for the community. Now, it's very painful that you have heard recently, no matter what you've heard the last day or two, the Triduum services, Holy Week, Holy Thursday, Holy Friday, Holy Saturday, are now extended to be private only. They're not public. They will not be held in church with the congregation. I've heard how difficult that is, and I, as a priest for 40 years, I can't bear the thought of having those services without a congregation. But again, to protect one another by all reasonable advice of the experts from the federal to the local and the archbishop level, we observe what they say, and we know that somehow we'll gather in God. Because of the limitation on crowds and things, the archbishop has wisely said that we are to not have these ceremonies as typical public ceremonies. They will be observed, however, I want you to know. Father Nickolai and the deacons will be observing the Easter Triduum in our church on Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and I believe at one Mass on Easter Sunday morning. We will be taping these. I call it taping still, it's the era I'm from. We will be videoing those. And right after we end, say by 9 o'clock or something on an evening, they'll be made available through the different platforms that we have, through the Flock Notes thing, through an email, on our parish Facebook page. And I know a lot of you are good at negotiating those things. So besides the cathedral services that we do have, as you know, they're always online. There's a cathedral mass at 8 o'clock every morning. There's a cathedral mass Saturday night at 5 o'clock and on Sundays at 10. And we're going to look at, starting this weekend, we'll let you know about a taped mass, a videoed mass from our church here. For sure though, those Triduum services, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday will be videoed and made available to you. So I just want to say, without the opportunity of Mass, which is so bizarre for all of us, you know, what's occurred to me as your pastor is that if we do come into Mass, it's presumed that we're bringing something into Mass, that we're bringing a heart already focused on God, dedicated to God in our life above everything else. And I don't know how we all stack up on that. Sometimes I'm too distracted getting into things at the beginning of Mass. So without being able to actually physically go to Mass, we can check on ourselves on the other days, on the other hours. Is my heart centered on God, that if I were to walk into Mass, I would be ready? That's the predisposition, it's called, for the sacrament. The predisposition is that our hearts are already focused on God. So there's nothing that can stop us from honing this resource, from sharpening our sense of God's presence at all times. You may remember that I read a Carmelite brother from the 1600s named Brother Lawrence. He had been a soldier in the 30 Years' War. And he encouraged us that you can always stay present to God, even running up a hill with sword in hand. Okay? As if sword was in hand. We can always maintain our presence to God. Now, going back for a moment to, again, the prudence and the civic cooperation of the Archbishop about having the buildings closed and about not having public masses at this time. Last Friday we had our last fish fry. We did do a carry-out fish fry, but we're not going to try to push that anymore. But given the fact that we were doing a fish fry in these extreme times, number one, all the workers had gloves on. We had other health precautions. But I brought a yardstick so that when people waited in line for their fish to take out, I didn't have to say much. They knew it. I kind of put the yardstick up between people and they spread out. Most of them were already. It's supposed to be 6 feet, social distancing. And one dear lady, Carol Klein, thank you, she looked at this and she said to me, "You're the ruler." I'm not the ruler as in the ruler of a king, but I'm the measurer. And I did not exempt people at the fish fry from these regulations that are in public. And I've been asked a number of times since last Monday when the buildings were closed, couldn't I wink and look the other way and just make an and I know I am the ruler in that sense. I am the measure. I keep us safe as pastor according to the best guidelines on the federal, the state, the local level, and the orders of our Archbishop. Don't expect me to bend the rules. At this time, I would not want that terrible responsibility of thinking that I put somebody into a bad, exposed place because I looked the other way as if it were a favor. So I just wanted to establish that. Community, that's what we're going to do. And we're with a lot of other people, every other Catholic parish, and all of the other places and the people throughout the world. So again, I want to stay connected. Several of you have said you enjoyed getting these messages on Flocknoter, my parish app, as I do. I'm glad you like it. We'll keep this going. I hope to have Father Nickolai do a video next week. Remember that without physically being able to get to Mass, now you can come to church 2 separate hours every weekday and an hour on Saturday. Without physically attending Mass, you can always ask yourself, am I connected with God? Am I focused on God at a deep level, the way I would have to be anyway if I was going to Mass? I think that's my encouragement. I'm working hard at it myself to stay connected to God. My schedule is a little bit different. Father Nickolai and I are working every day in the office. We're having private Masses that are for the sake of the people. And yet, of course, things aren't as normal. So without the usual things in my life, I miss the children. Right now, I would be teaching 2nd grade in school on First Communion, and I wish I was. And then I'd be playing with them in the cafeteria as I do a couple little tricks for them. I miss all of that. In the meantime, I'm working hard to stay connected with God. People, nothing can keep you from staying connected with God. One more thing. I know so many of you have the devotions that are so important, the Rosary. And by the way, use the luminous mysteries of the Rosary sometimes. They're marvelous. I know so many of you use the Rosary and some other prayer books that are a comfort with written words. Use them to the max, but don't stop there. I've said in homilies various times, listen to God. Don't only talk to God, but listen to what God might be saying to you. That's why we've had these talks called Lectio Divina. That's going to be on the website, where you let Scripture talk to you. So I'd encourage you, it's a good time to broaden your prayer types, not only the Rosary and our devotional books, but also reading of Scripture. You can look at the Word on Fire videos. They're available for you through Flock Notes, and other things that we're going to be sending to you. Keep various ways to make sure that you're hearing what God says to you, not only telling him where you're at. I love you, I miss you, I think of you, and we'll see you again soon.